We've got a jam-packed time. So Morena, and welcome to the workshop this morning. We're just going to start with a karakia. So, tū taua mai e ronga, tū taua mai a raro, tū taua mai a waho, tū taua mai a roto. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa. Humi e, hui e, taki e. So welcome, ko Chloe Howard toko ingoa. My name is Chloe Howard and I'm an associate with the Centre for Social Impact. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to welcome you who are all here this morning to the Kia Whiti Tonu series. So this is a free program of 5 90-minute workshops offered to the community sector by the Centre for Social Impact with support from Foundation North. The program has been developed following our recently released National COVID-19 Impact Survey of tangata whenua, community and voluntary organisations that was carried out over May and June by CSI in partnership with Hui, Philanthropy New Zealand, Volunteering New Zealand and Volunteering New Zealand. The findings of the survey were published in the Time to Shine report, which I'll pop a little link in and we'll make available so people can find it. So in the survey, I identified a strong commitment across the sector to respond, recover, and then reshape for the future. It also identified some key areas where respondents wanted support to help them shine brightly and build back better after the disruption of COVID-19. So today we've got one of the 5 workshops being offered. They cover grant writing, marketing and communications, today's one on innovation, one on strategy, and we had one on well-being earlier in the week. We're aiming to make all the sessions as accessible as possible. These workshops were heavily oversubscribed, so it will help. So we will be recording and making them available through the CSI website. But just a note that the breakout sessions won't be recorded. At the end of the session today, we'll be asking for some feedback via a survey link in the chat. This is really important as it will help us to inform any future programs or delivery. We really want to make sure that we're offering the sector what it needs or what's it looking for. So I'm now going to introduce today's workshop, which is on innovation, and it's being run by Louise Mara. Louise is an associate for the Centre for Social Impact with many years of experience working in and leading on innovation, both in New Zealand and internationally. Louise has got postgraduate qualifications in environmental management, public policy, and Jungian and transpersonal psychology. She's trained with mystic and collective trauma expert Thomas Hubel and through the Pocket Project. She's an executive coach and group process leader, employing many different modalities, including somatic therapies. She works mainly with diverse groups of leaders on transforming patterns of the past and leading for systems change within us and within the whole. She's worked for prime ministers, boards, NGOs, corporate teams, public sector and philanthropy across the globe in emergent practice, social innovation, deep group healing processes and leadership. Deeply connected to the living planet and all its beings. She's part of the Ngā Toho tribe in New Zealand and passionate about reconnecting people with nature. We're really pleased to have Louise with us and I'm now going to hand over. Welcome everyone.
Yeah, kia ora koutou, nā toi rawa pōta ki te whenua, nā tūhoi te rangatiratanga ko Louise Mara tuku ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Beautiful to be here, and some of you I know, which is lovely to see you, and some I don't know, but it's equally lovely to see you. And yeah, it's a topic I'm very passionate about, is innovating a new world. So I'm not so much into innovating the same world. So that's kind of the first thing. But of course, all of you are change makers or you wouldn't be in the roles that you're in. So that's kind of my favorite work, is working with change makers on how do we create change. And yeah, so I have many rivers in my being. I whakapapa te tūhoi, I was brought up in Te Urewera, and so much of my insight and innovation ability comes from that place, actually. I really want to honour that. I also have rivers of Scottish, Irish, French, Italian, and so much of my journey has been bringing those rivers together. So I'm kind of going to talk about that, because in some ways this 90 minutes you've given up to spend could be highly annoying. Like, in some ways, innovation's annoying. And for two reasons. One is because everyone wants like a toolbox to innovate outside of them in their organization, and we have got one. But I actually really want to spend this session on one of the main things that needs to happen, which is, how do you innovate yourself? How do you actually work with yourself as an evolutionary being? And I've seen it such a lot, certainly working in government, where one of the prime departments that's responsible for innovation spent all its time on how everyone out there should innovate, but actually wouldn't innovate itself. And if we don't really connect to, you are all integrally part of the system. Like, the system isn't there and I'm here. We're all part of the system. So if I innovate me, you become an innovative force in your organization. You become that energy, and that energy starts to infuse the system. So in my work with change makers, it's very much around being the change you want to see. So that's why it's annoying. And because it's like, okay, well, what's your relationship with innovation? What are your barriers to it? And we'll kind of go through some of this. The other reason why it's annoying and irritating, this area, is because humans think about 80,000 thoughts a day. That's how many, that's why sometimes our mind drives us crazy. 80,000 thoughts a day. And the research says about 90% is the same as yesterday. That's why we really struggle as humans to create a new world. And innovation, in some ways, or I like to work with the word insight, is trying to interrupt that. But we have this funny thing as humans that keeps us habitual, and habitual is comfort. So we just keep repeating. So we've got to interrupt that habitual with some freshness, and the brain in a way resists it a little bit, because it takes more glucose to actually do something different. So that's kind of where we get this sort of irritation. Well, I don't really want, I want to, but I don't want to. And for me, I really have become dedicated in my life. Like, we all have our purpose, and mine is really to help people. I call it unenslave the wairua. Like, how do we unenslave the wairua, which is trapped? Life energy gets trapped in habits and in our trauma patterns. But there's still essential life energy. And how do we free it so we become a walking evolutionary? Now, I looked at the list of where you're all from, and of course, you must be called to be a walking evolutionary, because you're all in positions of change. So something's calling you to create change. And that's a really important thing to honour. So I've already said a lot in a way, hey? A short amount and a lot. So let's take a pause, because pausing's vital. And I'm going to ask you, first of all, to put in the chat box now just how you arrive in the session, just a word. So it might be, I'm tired, I'm racing, I'm excited, whatever one word is for you, and what you want from this session. So we kind of take a snapshot of how you are now, and then we're going to take a snapshot of how you are at the end of the session when we've gone through a process. Make sense, ka pai? Does everyone know how to do chat? We're all such Zoom experts now, aren't we? Yeah. And however you arrive is perfect. Yeah, and anything you want from the session as well. Expectant, curious, eager, keen. Okay, Christina, noted, excited, energized, keen, busy, love, eager, curious, eager, open but tired. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Wanting fresh ideas. Yeah. Yeah. Growth from trauma to give back to society. Yeah. Post-traumatic growth. Such a big thing to work with. Beautiful. See on the second page. Yeah, so just feel into efficient, so I'm not swamped in tasks. Yeah. Re-energized about social change for good. Beautiful. Yeah, so this is our collective room today. Hey, and just have a look around, and as you look at the chat and you look at each other, these your fellow change makers, your fellow travelers, all in their specific part of our society, doing their best. And I can see, yeah, so honour the organisations and the work you're doing. So just take a moment to honour the work you're doing yourself. And then to almost look around and honour the work everyone else is doing. Yeah, and then you can kind of almost feel a different, coherence in this virtual room. Yeah, thank you for that. So we're going to have a process of kind of guided reflection. Some tools, as I said, I've got a whole toolbox, and we'll go towards that at the end so that you know you're going to go away with resources, practical. But I really thought about what's the best use I could be to you. And that's really about your own relationship with this topic. That's the most use I could be to you. And we'll also have a small group process that we'll set up very safely just to help reflection. So, one of the things around insight is that your insight, I use insight and innovation interchangeably, your insight is always there, trying to find you. Because if we get into hunting down innovation, it kind of eludes us because we're in a state that's a bit over trying. And that's a really important thing because it becomes around the conditions I need to create for myself in order for my insight innovation to land, and the conditions I need to create for my organization, and the conditions I need to create for my team. So that's a very fundamental basis for becoming a evolutionary team, I call them. The second thing is, and I think you'll all resonate with this, is there's a lot of innovation in the world that we don't need. We don't really need another brand of flavoured tuna. But we do need innovation at deeper levels. So I'm really focused on transformational innovation. I'm not so focused on incremental, because incremental keeps us in a paradigm or a worldview that itself needs to be innovated. Does that make sense? So that's the territory we're in, is this transformational, all of this is in the slides too, but this transformational innovation. And there's kind of an iceberg of things, hey? And the top of the iceberg is all what you can see. So it's all the seen world, and it's the, you know, it's where we can get stuck, and certainly in the NGO world, into reactivity. Okay, we've got a problem, we'll react to that problem and we'll innovate at the top of the iceberg. Transformational energy looks below the sea to innovate the patterns, the worldviews, the basis of which is creating the problem. So an example around the tuna would be, we're not innovating a new tuna, we're actually changing the patterns of consumer buying to be sustainable around fish. Or we are, like, there's a lot in the food system innovating around clean meat or things like that, like we're actually looking below. So that becomes a really important thing, and one of the things I work on, and very dear to my heart, is how we work with a decolonising process in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now that would change deeper patterns that then you wouldn't see the same things at the top of the iceberg. So this transformational innovation is around innovating your culture, your way of being in the system, the paradigm you actually sit in. And and almost like what resources you for your work. So all of these are ripe for innovation. So in this transformational innovation, it really comes down into those lower layers. So let's just pause and see if there are any questions, because I know I'm kind of saying a lot, and then I'm going to go into some reflective questions for you all. And anytime you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can. But is this making sense? Great. Yeah, so in those layers of the iceberg, and I can show you a visual of the iceberg. Let's do that. Just so you know, these are all here. Yeah, so these events of what we can see, these patterns in behaviour, these structures, like how are we organised? And I want you to think about that for yourself too. How do I organise my life? Our mental models and theories, or I call it worldview, and what we're really, part of our purpose. So all of this to me is where we really need to be innovating. And if we just stay at the top of the iceberg, we don't innovate a new world. Now, of course, I'm not saying stop all that, because we don't want to give up on what's happening there, but we want to kind of put a fair amount of effort below. So let me go into some, has everyone got a pen and paper? So I'm just going to ask you some questions, and some of them I sent around and some I didn't. But a really good indication also of where to innovate. And I want you to just focus on you for a few of these questions as the innovator. Where do you feel stuck? Where in your life do you feel stuck? And where in your workplace does it feel like there's just stuck energy? Remember I said to me, innovation's unenslaving the Wairua. Where is it stuck? Where do you feel you're just doing the same thing and not getting any different results? That's a really important question. And remember, the habitual is in some ways the antithesis of the insight. And where do you feel in your life, and when I say life, I mean work and personal life, like let's not separate them. Where is flowing? Like, where do you notice you're just naturally flowing? Grant funding. We'll come to that. Just really note down what's true for you, because if it's you're hitting a brick wall around grant fund, well, let's include that. It is what I mean. And what part of you kind of innovates or has insight? Like, really connect to that part. It's actually a part of us. And that part of us needs feeding, acknowledging. Feel into it. Sounds a strange question, but feel, what part of me actually innovates? If you go into, I don't think I have it, that's not true, so let's just park that. And what part of you just gets shit done? Like, what part of you just gets stuff done? And feel it. I want you to feel that part. Because they're different. And what, in that innovative part, what conditions, like, when do you have your biggest insights? I asked you that question. And I want you to think about the conditions, like often people say in the shower, or when I go for a walk, or what for you is when you actually get fresh insight? What are those conditions? Because you have all the answers inside you to this thing of how to innovate. And what do you notice in your teams when it actually gets innovative? Like, what are the ingredients for your organization when it starts to feel unstuck? Just a few more questions. And do you create those conditions for yourself and your team? I call them as rituals. Like, are those conditions in your life and in the life of your team and organization? And if they are they there enough? And what's your relationship with failure? Yeah. And what are your barriers to innovation and insight? It's the last question. Yes, I love to see some comments in the chat. And there was one here, Maluz. Am I saying that name, your name right, Maluz? When I feel relaxed, I can think clearly and tackle stuff. When I'm stressed, I can't move forward. That is so true. Your wisest place is your most relaxed place. So I don't know what you've come up with, but I'd love to see what conditions in the chat will come on, because when we're all tense and contracted, we're not really open to our insight. The last question was your barriers to innovating, and also put up around failure. It's such an important thing. Failure is compost for innovation. So many people say to me, yeah, I'm okay with failure, and our organisation fail fast, but it's bullshit. Like, they're not doing that. All these systems are set up for succeeding, and not many systems and processes and rituals are created for failure. So we're going to go on to that. Yeah, so let's hear any thoughts. I'm going to say a bit more, then we'll put you in small groups, but love to hear. These conditions are so important. Yeah, failures feel like shame. It's true. We come from a society where failure is shamed. People who feel shame don't feel shame because of themselves. It's a collective disorder because society can't deal with something. That's a really important thing. Yeah, beautiful things in the chat. Innovate when running, meditative, breathing. Yeah, without focus. I so agree with that. The time spent thinking and discussing without focus on outcomes. This is true. Yeah, I beat myself up when I fail. Yeah, these are beautiful. So, there's so much to do. We're going to stay here for a week. day and night, until we're just walking innovation labs. Like, there's so much in this chat. And that, like I say, part of being a walking innovator is that you feed this place. You feed it in yourself and in your teams. And it's true. I think Grant said, when I'm not focused, we can become so focused, we become like an arrow. Innovation is when we become like a circle. And I'm open for the insight to land. I really want you to get that you're not hunting an innovative idea, you're opening to what insight's ready to land. And we are all caught in the busy highways. You know, one of my expertise is in collective intergenerational trauma, as I said. The busy highway is a trauma highway. It is not the place to innovate off, because you will create more, because you're not innovating in those lower layers. So this ability, everything you've got here, to pause, to create space, to not over focus, to relax. There was quite a lot of innovation in COVID, and people have asked me, but that was a stressful time. And I'm like, yes, but in the companies and organizations I worked for, they surrendered a bit. They got off normal patterns. So in some ways, in that surrendering to something bigger than them, they insight could find them. They couldn't just continue the habitual way. The other thing, like, you know, this is a Maramataka calendar. I love it. It's my new fave thing. And the time and the environment is not always right for innovating. So also part of insight is being in tune with our own rhythm. We're just in busy get stuff done mode. Let's not try and innovate off this. Let's look at a different time. I mean, I love working with the Maramataka. I'm a lifelong learner of it. But there's times where we feel more expansive, and there's times where we feel more contracted. So you can also look at setting time aside. When might that work? How do we kind of create these spaces and time and places where we're not focused so much on outcomes? We're really focused on letting insight land into the system. Yeah, making space for the team to innovate together. Free space, no other demands. And then Donna, when others contribute to the pull, I love that. If we look around this room, like, the older I get, the more I realize I'm only really good at a few things. I'm not perfect, and I don't want to be. I want to be more wild than perfect. It's a decolonizing process. If I'm only good at a few things, then I need community. And then the insight that's trying to find us to innovate the system, some will come through me, some will come through Emma, some will come through Alison, some will come through Donna, some will come through Grant. And then when we put those together, you can get pure magic. And I think we're getting out of the hero or the heroine. I love that. Like, we actually have to form collective bodies of insight, because I'm going to get a different one than you will. But together we will be able to see the system and innovate the system more. So don't try and become the heroic innovator. Okay, so just to set you up for a triad, I want you to think some of the conditions I work with are, let me find the slide because it might help. Share screen. Not so big on death by PowerPoint, but we will give it to you. So, innovate off, with, and for. This is a really simple slide, and I want you to think about either yourself, your team, your organisation. So with is who is your service ultimately for? So I work a lot in the environment, and their service is also ultimately for the earth, but they don't include the earth. And this nothing for me without me is the same with the earth. So one of the things I do in environmental organisations is let's bring the earth in. Let's not innovate so much for, but with. Future generations, let's bring them into our kōrero. Current tamariki, like who is your service for, and what is the authorising environment calling you to be in service of? I would really invite all of you, because of course this seems an obvious question to people in the NGO sector, but I would also invite all of you to include in your purpose that you're here for the evolution of life. That's part of your service. And I've stopped trying to solve anything, because solving energy is actually a trauma energy, and started to, how do we set off waka of evolutionary pathways that brings in the old, that can guide us and works with the wairua. And then we prototype and move and experiment. Innovate off the radical. What would be a leap? What if you don't want to necessarily innovate off the ordinary or the habitual. What would be a leap? What would be, I know I'm with, we're in a grant making situation, but because grant making, what would be a leap? How could I potentially, work with a grant maker, government, other agencies to actually innovate in a really small way to try a whole different process of grant making? Who could I find that would do that with me? So anyway, that might be the radical. Let's leap and do something small. Prototyping is your friend, experimenting. Innovate where things are stuck, because there's a lot of energy going into that impasse, and it actually just drains everyone. So where are things stuck? Innovate there. And then innovate, well, where is the change? Where is the energy for change? Like I used to work big government processes, and people would get stuck in, well, this minister doesn't want to do this and they won't do it, and this is what should happen and they won't do it. Well, they won't do it, stop. But what will they do? And let's innovate there. Like there's a season. Don't fall in love with an idea that you just are pushing. Pushing energy is also quite a trauma energy. So where's the energy for change? And then for, I talked about this as with actually, what's the environment calling you to be in service of? And then I love this slide because it just says so much. Chloe and them will recognize this. Be then scrappy. Then be scrappy. So that means prototype, experiment in these small ways of those things to stop this kind of habituation, to go, wow, I could do something different. So even in your own life, if you've got a very ritualized way of getting up every morning, what could you do differently? 3 times a week or 2 times a week. Or if you've got a very habitual way of running a meeting, stop and do something differently, because you get everyone into this somnambulism, which is like walking sleep. Stop doing your meetings the same way. Like, these things seem little, they're big, because they release this habitual energy. So I really want you to just have a think about that for yourselves now. Where could I experiment with these things in a small way and be scrappy to give something a go, to learn what fails and learn what works? How do we create actually learning rooms, processes, rituals that really are at the edginess that we feed off? Do you know what I mean? And they're small, so they're actually not, you should never run a prototype that costs you a lot of money. That's not a prototype. So you've always got this kind of edginess built into your organization and life that you're learning off and putting into your way of being, into your organization. Should we break from the ritual to before visionary? I don't understand the question so much, Anne. Do you want to come on? To before. Well, let's come back to that. Anne doesn't want to come on. But I'd like to put you into, should we break from the ritual? Sorry, should we break from current practices? I think you need to break current practices in those areas where you're stuck. Like, don't keep doing, that's Einstein's thing, that we do the same thing and expect different results. Like, it's actually really common that we do that, eh? So we don't need to go into shame or judgment, but we can go, wow. And I love working with teams to go, wow, we're really stuck again, aren't we? Like, let's just stop and let's create some new rituals and processes that actually, when we get that stuck, we know what to do. We just break. I teach people the most radical thing that seems to be the most radical thing in our world, which is to pause. To pause, ground, breathe, open, and just see what wisdom finds us. So I'm going to put you into triads, and you've just got 4 minutes each, it's not too long, to just process what's landing in you and anything that you might give a go. It's really good to say, well, I might give this a go in my life, and I might, might be too soon to do that, but just anything that's landing in you that you can hear needs some innovating for yourself or your organization. The structure of the triad is, and we'll put some words in the breakout, but you've got 4 minutes each with a little pause between. It's not a dialogue. You're just holding that a person in appreciation. Someone put judgment in the chat. Judgment is the other crucifier of innovation. So you're only listening with appreciation. And you're listening, and then you just thank them, and then move to the next person. So much of what I do is just building processes of witness. You're not giving advice. You're not saying, oh, that's me too. You're just giving them some presence, which opens the space. Make sense? And whatever you want to process of what's landing, or what you might give a go, or what insight is landing in you in this process. Kapai? So Aggie's going to put you in, and we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. So, and we'll put into the breakout thing the timing. That being the co-host. welcome back, everyone. Yeah, keen just to hear any insights going off to share with the whole, any questions. You can either unmute. I know it seems a bit nerve-wracking in front of everyone, but your insight will help someone else.
We started talking about ways that that you can get your team to feel like they have the space and time to innovate. How you get the right people around you and create the environment to get the ideas going, which is lots of space and lots of room, which is really hard when you're kind of overwhelmed in crazy 2020 with a whole lot of compliance.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's so true. And I mean, I noticed for myself that I finished this year a bit tireder than I have. And I've got good practices. It's not the time for me to innovate my life right now. But I miss it. I miss my innovative self because I've been a bit down getting things done, finished, So I really want you to feed that over the summer. Feed that part of you. Give it time and space. And yes, for your teams. Like, as you think about for the new year, how am I going to create that time and space? And I use a lot of biomimicry. Get outside, find 3 things. What would that tell you about your team? Like, it's time and space and different processes. And I've got in the toolbox some ways of doing all of that. But don't try and innovate in your office. Like, you've got to create these off-ramps off the busy highway. You just have to. And it, in the end, serves you so well. Where are we stuck? What can we change in the stuckness? What could we try that's radical? So you've always got this other, more soulful, more intuitive little stream going through your team. But I'd be wary of trying something right now. I don't know about you, but it's been a big year. We all need to do a bit of nourishment and really feed your soul, your self. You are the system. And if you just keep putting exhaustion into the system gets more exhausted. You take care of you, and part of the system gets taken care of. But yes, totally agree. Next year, how about once a month for half a day, you create an off-ramp with your teams. At the least, to think together, feel together, not be focused on outcomes. The future, as I started off, the future's always trying to land. Give it the container, the time and the space to land. We need you to do this. The world's speeding up. There's going to be a lot of dismantling. Like, I've just started a big climate international lab, man. Things are going to get more disruptive. Don't just get on the busy highway. It's not helpful. You're not making the most of your change maker abilities. Yeah. So that would be my little challenge to you all. Does that feel too much? Half a day, once a month. The other thing I'd love to suggest that you all do, and I coach a lot of senior execs, and I send them out for 20 minutes a day to do an innovation walk. Now, if I said 20 minutes a day to do a well-being walk, they wouldn't do it. Like, why, I don't know, but I've learned. Send them out to do an innovation walk to clear their head, commune with Papatuanuku, and they do it. I would really encourage you in your workday to get out and do a 20-minute, man, it will do amazing things. My most pressured job was working for the Prime Minister. There's about 12 people that sit around the Prime Minister in New Zealand, and you're on tap 24/7 as a filter. It was so stressful. If I didn't do that, I got so stressed I couldn't think. I had no insight. I was just like, I was too alarmed. Yeah. These practices are for big times. I love that thing. In urgent times, slow down. So how about even towards the end of this year, as you hurtle into summer, 20 minutes a day, I'm going to take myself for a little innovation walk. I learned the other day something from McKinsey. I don't often learn something from McKinsey. That's a bit rude. We're only productive about 3 hours a day. I agree. You take yourself out for that little walk. Those would be some of my little new rituals. Anyway, any other sharings? And then I'll add as they, rather than just give a lot of information. But look at biomimicry, fantastic stuff. And I've got a bit in there, but I use nature all the time with teams. Like one little tool, I go outside, find something dying, something ugly, something beautiful, something surprising. And then I get them to come back with their little symbols. What does that tell you is ready to die in your organization? What's something seed-like? What's ready to give birth? Like, what would it say about? So you're kind of trying to drop in outside thoughts in. What's ready to live? These are such beautiful, nourishing processes to unstick the wairua. In some ways, that's all part of your purpose, to unenslave the wairua in your organisations, and then in yourself and the organisations, and then the system starts to flow. It's pretty stuck in some areas, eh? Any other insights?
Hi.
Home. You've just got
Russell,
home.
I'm Russell. Hi. Yeah, we're now lovely talk. We just touched on, let's say, don't always see eye to eye with everybody. Sometimes there might be, something you need to do together that not everybody's on board, and maybe there could be some historical major rift of opinion somewhere. And just reflecting on how important it is to find the common ground, and maybe just leave that difference of opinion behind and try to discover what you do actually agree on, and be a bit creative about looking at issues from a different angle, until you can actually all have a shared purpose there.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing. I'm so glad that you raised that. Because this is really important, hey? So that's why I say, well, where is the energy in your teams? Where is the energy for change? And really good to go, okay, well, there's going to be a lot less of a battle when there's the energy for change. And this is why innovation is so annoying, because there's always an and. There's a lot of fear around change, and we can't keep being held back by the fear. So that's where I think prototyping's your friend. We know this is radical and we're afraid of it. In some ways you want a bit of fear. Can we just give this a go in such a small way that we learn if our fear is wisdom or our fear is just a barrier? So I always name the fear. And that's where, what would be a really small way that this becomes a really edgy place to learn? Because of course you're going to learn how to be together in fear. And prototypes, it's all in the toolbox. They're not they actually have a discipline behind them, that we're setting the prototype up for a certain period, and that makes people feel safe. Okay, 2 months. And with learning goals, what are we seeking to learn? It's an experiment. And you're giving the real option that it fails. Okay, let's learn. You could be right. Could we test it? But it's not just getting stuck in this fear that doesn't allow for the change. I'm not dishonoring the fear, because I really honor it. So it's a bit of an and there. Yeah, otherwise the system doesn't evolve. And that's why I think also set your organization culture up, that we're having to create and be change makers in a world that, you know, in some ways, a lot of you sit in trauma fields, and it's not necessarily trauma informed. It's another big topic, by the way. We won't go into it, but I believe there's a way in which we can operate in these, especially with some of the work that you do. How you innovate in those becomes equally important, but how you set up these really safe prototypes to actually try something in a really safe way, where everyone's fears can be heard in that process, but it doesn't become the block in that process of ever starting something new. So a lot of our ability to innovate is about our relationship with fear and failure. Does that kind of answer that? There's a lot to say about that. I think also, it's not just saying to your team, okay, let's innovate. Like, it's part of the conditions of understanding and, yeah, kind of setting it up sort of to be safely edgy and for a time. And of course, in a prototype, it's not a pilot. A prototype, if something's not working, you don't wait for the end of the 2 months. You go, what could we change right now? And that makes people feel safe. So a prototype is, okay, we've done this for a couple of weeks, but I don't like that bit. Could we yes, you iterate. You're changing as you go. Tren.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Louise. I wondered, because I feel like when you're talking about all these things, I feel like I have lots of examples of innovation, and that we're doing good things, and that we're, I feel like we're innovating and changing and pivoting all the time. So if anything, I'm wondering if we're not failing enough. And so to me, I'm kind of like, I'm wondering, maybe, does that mean we're not being edgy enough, or like we're not pushing it like enough? Enoughness.
Yeah. Yes, you are doing great things. Yeah, such a heart for your organisation. 2 things to consider. One is that could be true, and just again always have a little edgy thing going that you're learning. It can be small. The other is, and you might be in, I'm so glad you raised this, you might be in this box, is that some people and organisations get into constant innovation and setting off 10,000 hares and rabbits. That's not that useful either. So that's really good that you raised that. Sometimes, and this is where I love the maramataka, sometimes we all just need to stop and embed. So it's like, okay, same as if you've run a prototype and you've learned, let's embed that. That's a time of embedding. So it might be, I don't know, but it might be, actually, we really need to embed some of these things so they become the new way of just doing things. And not just set off another cool idea. You must all know people and organisations. It might be a bit of you, it can be a bit of me, where there's just a whole new shiny idea. But that's why you have to go, is it the season? Is it the time? Is there the energy? Is it where we're stuck? You know, otherwise you can chase ideas. So this embedding, I can come back and ground things. And the Maramataka way of being is there's a time and place, and it's built into my life, and there's a time and place, just, whew, let's just embed for a month, and then we'll set off another prototype. So there's wisdom in this territory, isn't there? You don't want to make it an excuse for exhausting everyone. And remember, you can prototype off your meetings, you can prototype off your work week, you can prototype off your, like, you know, I put in things like meetingless days. It's such a relief for people. You can innovate off your worldview. Well, actually, maybe we are a social agency, but what would happen if we worked with the earth? There's so many different things that you innovate in your way your business is set up, your organization's set up, that leads to an innovative culture. You know that quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast any day. So this is it's a mindset, it's a heart set of experimentation. Any other? I've got two things. One, just keep open for questions, and one is to do a little creative exercise. So I'm just seeing. Creative exercise. Okay, cool. So I want you to just put 4 columns in your page. And at the top of your columns, column 1, I want you to put the words, I am. Just at the top of one column, I am. Now I want you just to brainstorm with yourself, with that innovative part of you, a whole lot of words, just words that come to you. I am. We're going to write our own whakatauki. I am. Just whatever words come into you, because we are a mystery. You're not a fixed thing. In the second column, this is an intuitive, quick exercise. I want you to put, I innovate when. I've already asked you this question. I innovate when I'm still, I'm silent, I'm in nature. Just a whole lot of words. And then the next column at the top, I want you to write, I long for ... and a whole lot of words that you might finish that sentence. I long for. And then last column is my evolutionary self is, and what words come. My evolutionary self is exhausted right now. My evolutionary self is wanting to come out. My evolution, whatever. My evolutionary self feels like the moana. My evolutionary self is the moon. Ah. Okay, you've got that. And now, I just want you, in the spirit of starting to write your own whakatauki, it's such a cool thing, to write yourself just 4 lines, and you start with the line I am, but you have to pick up words from one of the other columns. And you start with the one I innovate when, but you've got to pick up words from the other columns. So you're playing with this bricks and mortar of words. For each of those, I evolve and pick up words from the other. So it might not make sense, and we're not after it making sense. We're finding some unlikely links. It's just 4 lines where you play around with those columns. Make sense? It's playing. The universe is playful.
Sorry, is there like a beginning of a sentence that that we need to start with and then choose those words, or
you can do what you like? You can innovate this.
It doesn't make sense.
It's not meant to make sense, but if you want to have a play in any way, you just write 4 lines of what come to you from what you've written.
Oh, okay, got you.
I was giving you a form, but you don't have to stick to it.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just plonking those words together. I was like, how do I make that a sentence?
Well, they can be quite cool. But
okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Emma's innovating my process right now. Perfect. Just another minute. And you can keep working on this. It'd be so great that you end up building your own proverb, whakatauki, that guides you in this. I love doing things like this. And then I want you just to pick your favourite line and put it in the chat. What's your favourite line? Not your perfect line. Perfect, we're all recovering perfectionists. The perfect is the antithesis of the, cool, my evolutionary self is fierce. I love it. I long for a well-tended garden. Beautiful, hey? These are good. In myself, hey? Is that what you mean, Grant, as well? In yourself, yeah. And my other, I don't live off my garden. Love to see some others. I innovate when I'm connected to the earth, yes. Me too. Yeah, I innovate when childlike. Totally true. I innovate when I care. We're not responsible. I am calm. I have time to think. I'm with people. I'm reflective. I can see a better way. Yeah, as those are coming in, I'm just aware of the time. So I really want you to just keep feeling into your own innovative self, your own insight. Feed it, nourish it, let it replenish, let it out. Part of decolonizing is rewilding. It's beautiful in there. So we've got a toolbox we'll send out. I was going to go through it, but I won't. You can go through it. And really enjoyed all your presence today. And I'm going to pass back to Amy or Chloe, or Amy just talk about the survey, and loving seeing those come in, and yeah, hope we can continue to journey in some way.
Hi everyone, we've just got a super quick survey which I'm just going to pop in the chat now. If you could just take a couple of minutes just to complete it.
Do they do that now, Amy?
If people need to rush off, we will also send it out, because we'd really appreciate everybody's thoughts as to what we can do further post this workshop.
And there was comments about the maramataka. I don't really have time to answer, but yeah, such a beautiful thing for us to work with in Aotearoa. It's really got a resurgence, and yeah. Love that some of you are working with it too. That will really help. And Chloe, are we passing back to you? And we'll send out the toolbox. There's a lot in it, and there's quite a lot of detail on how to set up a prototype. There's models. Yeah, there's a few things we didn't have time to go over, but yeah, have a look. Were you going to say something, Chloe, or?
I can, or do you want to do, we're going to have a closing karakia.
That's right, I was going to do the closing karakia. Let's do this one.
Yeah, so we're just emphasising feedback, giving us lots of goodies. We'd really want to come out with some second offerings, and your input and feedback will really help with that. Yeah, so just really open and wanting to hear what people, how they felt, and what they need going forward.
Okay.
Lost Louise.
No, I just forgot to get my. Okay. Aio ki te aorangi, aroha ki te aorangi, koa ki te aorangi, pono ki te aorangi, kia tau ko te kahikura, te wairua kore here, te kawa e te tika me te pono, he tohu aroha tēnei, ki tia o whānui, he maumahara ki te whaia a Papatuanuku. And that was from Rose Pere from Tuhoi. Peace to the universe, love to the universe, joy to the universe, truth to the universe. May the violet flame, the spirit of freedom that upholds justice and truth prevail. This is the gift of love to the world, a token of our regard to Mother Earth. Yeah, kia ora everyone. Happy resting, nourishing, feeding. We finished on time. Wow.